How to stop rumination is living rent-free in your search bar. Here's the 2-minute loop break that gets you out of replay mode and back into adulting with purpose. So picture this, you're sat mid-cuppa, chocolate-coated hobnob, just about to dunk for the first time, and you notice your brain is replaying that one moment again. The look, the tone, the thing you said, the thing you didn't say, but really wished you had. You've watched the scene so many times, you've added subtitles and translated the entire thing into languages you didn't even know you spoke. Sadly, all that analysis doesn't make you the most in-tune person in the world, it just makes your problems more powerful, because rumination isn't deep thinking, it's a stress habit. And if you're a high functioning human, you're extra good at it, like gold stars all over your notepad good. And here's what you'll learn in this week's podcast episode: what rumination actually is and why it feels like processing even when it isn't, the difference between rumination and real analytical thinking, why rumination gets worse when you're stressed, the fastest way out of the loop, the RAT method to shift your state fast, the 2-minute rule for replay brain, and what to do if the loop comes back, the sneaky rewards that keep rumination alive, and how to stop being conned by them. Now, before we dive in, here's what rumination is in normal person English. So rumination is when you rewind the past more times than you had to rewind the tape of your favourite album way back in the 1990s. You roast yourself for it for weeks, months, and even years later. Predict 10 disasters for every teeny tiny mishap, and you still don't take the next step, even when you're sure that you're heading in the right direction. In a nutshell, rumination is rehearsal without resolution. You aren't solving anything, you're not moving forward, your life isn't magically becoming awesome. What you are doing, however, is becoming the world's foremost expert in feeling unsafe. In the same way Olympic athletes practice their sport over and over, you, my dear confused friend, are practicing how to be more anxious, and that path can lead to a very dark and dangerous place. And here's what I mean. So after spotting some of the things I was posting on LinkedIn, I was contacted by an employer to see if there was anything I could do to help their employee. I was, in essence, like the last chance saloon. My client, on paper, living the dream. 29-year-old lad, one son, girlfriend, full-time job, owned his own home. In reality, only able to work 3 days a week and couldn't go to jobs alone. He needed somebody beside him in case he spiraled because he was that unwell. He was also unable to be around his son without supervision, like his world was in free fall. So I do just need to interject a teeny tiny little trigger warning for what's coming next, but the backstory really is necessary, so just be mindful. So when he was 9, he was sexually abused by his uncle. He did the right thing, told his parents, stood in the docks as a witness, and said uncle ended up where he belongs, behind bars. But despite the ordeal, he had just 6 weeks of counselling. Yes, 6. Not the recommended 12, though in truth, I'm not sure anybody I've helped in the last decade has ever had 12. So anyway, fast forward to the 20 years when we met. He had a 4-person crisis team on standby. He was on antipsychotics, antidepressants, and a cocktail of other meds to manage his symptoms. And no matter what they were throwing at him, he was getting worse. Oh, and just so you know, he wasn't just overthinking or having a bit of anxiety. He was slipping in and out of reality multiple times a day, experiencing PTSD style auditory and visual hallucinations. Now, the dissociation hallucinations were so strong that in his mind, he was convinced he was moving between 2 parallel worlds. And here's the part that still makes my eye twitch and my heart break. The thing that he'd been told was helpful was actually the thing causing the rapid deterioration. You see, he'd written 20 plus journals in just 12 months, writing, analysing, rereading to understand his thoughts, but he wasn't processing anything. He was simply rehearsing and strengthening the fear, replaying the images over and over and over, rehashing the characters, the plot, the script of the story that was his life. And in session 1, I told him to stop and throw them away, and he completely freaked out and panicked and refused, saying that they helped. So we compromised. We did a little experiment and had a temporary pause. So he locked the journals in a box and gave his partner the key. So we ran a baseline DSM-5 APA symptom severity scale on entry, as I do with everybody. He scored level 4, which is severe across the board. Now, also with all my clients, I reassess every 4 weeks, so the results aren't just subjective and they get to see them. So 4 weeks later, by the next test, he dropped from level 4 to level 3 on many of the diagnostic categories and level 2 on a few others. And his friends, family, employer were reporting huge changes in his behaviour. So to put those numbers into perspective, level 4 is the highest you can score, like it's the worst. If you're level 2 and you rock up to a doctor, they'll tell you it's just a life blip, you're fine, it'll pass, and boot you out the door. Oh, and for context, he absolutely was using other regulation tools such as EFT, grounding, and reality testing. But the initial massive shift came from removing the loop fuel. Pumped from his 4-week results, he contacted the crisis team to ask about coming off medication eventually, and he was shut down by the mental health nurse, who told him categorically there's no cure for what he has and that what he experienced wasn't real. Yeah, telling the person with psychosis who'd actually been living in reality the last few weeks, not a dissociated state, that it wasn't real is not just morally corrupt and anti-science, it's definitely verging on James Bond level villain evil. Now, that conversation, of course, sent him into a tailspin, and by the time he returned the next week for our session, so session 5, he was understandably freaked out. So I brought him back down to earth, going over the things we'd done together, sharing back things that he'd told me his friends, family, and co-workers had said, and re-showed him the test results. But the most powerful and exasperated statement, which has since become my go-to in situations like this, was, if you break your leg and it heals, is it still broken? Or is it healed? Because actual scientifically proven concepts like neuroplasticity matter when it comes to healing. Not just the cherry-picked science to fit a narrative, the actual science. Because change isn't just allowed, it's a necessity. So back on Team Science, he went home that week and did something I absolutely didn't advise. He stopped his medication cold turkey, and he refused to take any more calls from the crisis team. Thankfully, he also did something I had advised and burnt every single journal. Now, as expected, by week 12, he was back working full time, allowed to be around his child, and he and his partner were looking at taking his son away on holiday. 3 months after therapy, no psychotic episodes reported. Now, when he struggled, because life inevitably throws us curveballs, he used the edutherapy knowledge from our time together, applying the right tools to the situation, and just stabilized his system fast. And then he carried on with his day. Now, this case isn't about showcasing that journaling is bad, especially as I'm a huge fan of journaling if done the right way. Like, I've included it to give you a real world example to help illustrate that the wrong tool in the wrong state can be disastrous. Now, for him, journal and analyze wasn't insight, it was rumination with a pen, and nobody on the team checked whether the tool was the problem. They just assumed the content, aka his thoughts, were the problem, and that assumption nearly cost him everything. So here's an easy breezy decision tree to help you quickly understand the difference between the two without you needing to trawl through medical text armed with 3 Americanos and an espresso chaser for good measure. So real thinking always ends in a decision. Rumination only ever ends up with you having a headache. So if you remember nothing else from this post, remember this: real analytical thinking always ends in a decision. And I'm not necessarily suggesting the decision is right, but a decision has been made, and that's what matters. So real thinking sounds like things like this: what actually happened? What could I have done differently? Was that really the only way to approach that situation? Or most importantly, what do I need to do next? On the flip side, rumination sounds like, why am I like this? What if they hate me? I should have said XYZ. I can't believe I did that again. Now, the easiest way to tell between the two is if there's no next step, it's not analytical thinking, it's rumination looping. And here's why rumination gets worse when you're stressed. So the most important thing to understand is that rumination isn't a personality flaw or an identity quirk. It's what your brain does when your threat system is turned up to full volume. And if you're underslept, hormonal, hungry, or wired on caffeine, your brain switches into scan for danger mode. Then it latches onto the most recent awkward moment and treats it like it's presenting the closing argument in Ally McBeal. And yes, I've done it again, shown my age. Look, the reality of the matter is that your brain ruminates to avoid action, because action, That's risky. Like driving the wrong way down a motorway during rush hour. Risky. Now, replaying your thoughts on a loop with the perception of change is so much safer. And if you've ever heard that phrase, better the devil you know, that's what's going on in your mind when you ruminate. Even if your life right now is a complete shitstorm, it's safer than what might happen if you mix things up a little. So the status quo is maintained, your mind wins because you wake up again tomorrow. And the fastest way out is by changing your state first. So if you've tried a million times to break the cycle but somehow end up stuck, please hear me when I say you cannot logic your way out of a body triggered alert. You need a state shift, because when your system's revved up, your do the thing brain goes offline. So your thoughts get louder, not smarter, just shouting like they're at a concert when they should be using their inside voice because the librarian is giving you the evils. Yes, it's rude, yes, it's annoying, but the fact is it's happening. But the best thing about body triggered alarm bells is that you don't need to spend hours and hours digging for a new insight. You just need a repeatable system that enables your nervous system to harmonize as quickly as possible. And if you want to know how quickly, see the podcast episode, How to Regulate Your Nervous System Fast, 9 body first tools that actually work. So when you start spiraling, think rat. Recognize, adjust, take action. So it's just 3 simple steps, and better yet, it takes about 2 minutes. So firstly, recognize the loop. Now, please don't try to solve the entire story. You just need to spot the pattern that's going on underneath. So ask yourself things like, am I replaying the same thing over and over again? Do I have a negative emotional reaction to this situation? Or am I getting 0 new information? And if yes, say out loud, this is just a loop. That one sentence alone helps to pull you out of the story and into the driver's seat of your own life. Secondly, adjust your body. It takes between 60 and 120 seconds. So rumination lives inside your body, so start there, not your mind. Your mind only plays the thoughts which align with the dominant emotional feeling. So change your feelings, change your thoughts fast. Now pick one of these tools and use it. So physiological sigh, inhale, top up, long, slow exhale, and do like 2 to 3. We don't want to be making yourself dizzy. Cold water, so splash your face or hold a cold can to your cheeks for around 20 seconds. Orienting, slowly look around the room and name 5 things you can see. Long exhale breathing. Breathe out longer than you breathe in, or EFT tapping. So tap through your points while you're naming the loop. And your goal is to just drop the stress level by 1 notch, not feel amazing. Just less like you're about to implode. So 2 minutes of body work regulates your system better than 20 minutes of talking it through when you're activated, because you're not arguing with your thoughts, you're just turning down the noise. So finally, the last step, T. Take one tiny next step. So now you give your brain the loop ending it hasn't been able to find on its own. Ask yourself, what is my next small step? Not a perfect plan, not your entire life fixed by the time you finished your cuppa, just the next step. So for example, send the 1 sentence text, hey, I think I came off sharp, I'm good, you good. Or write the first line of that email that you've been putting off. Or put your trainers on and head out the door. Or open the document that you haven't been writing, or book the GP appointment that you've been avoiding. So action tells your nervous system we're safe enough to move. And here's your new 2-minute rule for replay brain. So do this the second you catch the loop. Set a 2-minute timer, do rat. When the timer ends, take the next step. But most importantly, pay attention, because if doing the thing triggers another loop, just rat again. Now, if you're undoing months, years, or decades of looping, 1 interrupt gives you breathing space. It doesn't turn your life into one that's full of unicorns. But it really is that simple, and it was the key to undoing decades of trauma in the client from this post and many others I've worked with. Most importantly, please don't embark on a journaling trilogy. Now, before I finish up for this week, there's something to watch out for. Now, one of the reasons rumination is so addictive is because it pays you in the short term. It gives you fake control, a sense of being responsible, the feeling that you're doing something, but it also costs you big, like sleep, hello, 3 a.m. again, a tight jaw, a stomach that feels like it's full of bees, snappy replies to people you actually like. Now, rumination, it does not protect you. It just keeps you busy and distracted while you stay stuck. So check out the podcast episode, Overthinking Isn't Thinking Too Much. It's your nervous system hitting the brakes, to understand the full benefits of overthinking in detail so that you can quickly spot when your mind is playing tricks on you. And do you want to hear something a little depressing? No, the smarter you are, the more convincing the loop sounds. So your brain can write a whole TED talk about why you should panic, with perfectly timed pauses and stagecraft before you've even finished putting the toothpaste on the toothbrush. And if your loop is social, which FYI is the most common type, this next bit is for you, because unfortunately replay brain loves meddling with our social circles, even though rejection feels like death to your nervous system, especially if you're 42 and paying a mortgage. So if you find yourself systematically sabotaging all the relationships in your phone book anytime your mind loops, run this script instead. My brain is trying to keep me safe in the way which has become automatic. Judgment is unhelpful. I don't need certainty of the outcome. I just need one clear, small step, and then follow the 3 C's. Clear. Do a body tool to clear your nervous system. Correct. Your mishap, whatever it was. Clarify. Write one line to help you avoid the same mistake in the future. So start with something like, next time I'll. Then stop there. No essays, no groveling apologies that last for days and cost thousands. You messed up. You're human. It happens. Most importantly, it's absolutely okay. So acknowledge your mistake, forgive yourself, and then just move on. I see this pattern constantly. You might be up with the songbirds to squeeze in a morning walk, raising your kids single-handedly while holding down a job and remembering everybody's allergies. Then one weird comment at work and you spiral for 2 days. So when you switch to state first, story second, the loop stops fast, not because you fixed your mindset, because you stopped feeding the fire. And here's how you'll know if it's working. At first, you'll use rat a lot, and when I mean a lot, I mean like multiple times a day or hour if you've been trapped for a while. Then the loop fades faster, then it just shows up less. Then it becomes a distant memory of what life was like before. Look, you're not going to morph into a different person, especially not overnight, but keep trusting the system and you'll become the version of you who's no longer lives in replay mode. And if you're the kind of person who looks fine on paper but feels fried inside, you don't need more insight. You just need the right first move. So take the happiness archetypes test. It's free. It'll show you which state you're stuck in right now so that you're no longer guessing which tool you should be using to harmonize your nervous system. You'll also get a quick start plan to follow that matches how your system runs so that you can actually see a difference in how you're showing up before the next podcast episode drops. Links in the show notes below. Now, PS, the case mentioned has been anonymized as best as possible. It's from a case from about 6 years ago. It's not medical advice. It's not a promise. It's one case showing how the wrong tool can pull petrol on the wrong brain state. Medication changes should always be done alongside a health professional, and if you're in crisis or at risk of harm, please get urgent support. Have an amazing rest of your week, and I'll see you next time.